are you guys?
We're well, but a bit tired after a full day.
Yeah, I can imagine. So how long have you guys been going to these? Like, how many days have you been going to the conferences?
Well, I started going on, we had a day here at Marymount, which was mini COP21 on
Mm-hmm.
Saturday. And then Sunday I started in the afternoon. And Mary Jo,
I just came on Sunday.
Oh,
so
okay.
it's very energizing and very, there's a tremendous amount going on. Now, we are not able to be in the main negotiations as registered members because that requires a special accreditation.
Mm-hmm.
So there is what they call climate generations area, and it's a huge space with enormous number of activities going on, of panels and consultations and displays and exhibits and sometimes demonstrate little bits of demonstrations.
Yes.
You want to say a bit, Mary Jo?
Yes, and then there are about 10 rooms, or maybe more, about 12 rooms, where there are sessions going on all the time. There are 2-hour sessions where there are people on the panel talking and then times for question. And there is just so much information and a lot of debate. So it's very exciting in a way.
And different days have different themes. So, for example, gender was a big focus yesterday. Financing for climate change, the first day. It has, and women and gender yesterday and today, really. Tomorrow is human rights because it's Human
Oh,
Rights
okay.
Day.
The 10th of December.
So there's a different focus to the panels each day. So
Okay.
it's a very exciting and stimulating opportunity, but very overwhelming as well.
So my first question is, what is your role or purpose in this event for both of you?
Okay, well, in my role as NGO representative, a very important thing are the three aspects of education, advocacy, and participation. And obviously, this is enabling me to participate, even though it's on the fringe, of an extremely important UN conference.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it gives a flavor, a feeling, an ability to be with a vast variety of people who are involved in all the negotiations about the about climate change, and in all the civil society groups that are advocating. So that's one thing. So for me, it's a huge opportunity for collaboration, networking. Perhaps advocacy, it's a little bit less, but for the future, hopefully it will feed into that.
Okay.
And for me, I'm here because I'm the Justice, Peace and Integrity of Creation Coordinator for the Institute. And I have a contact with our 7 provinces and regions. And so I feel that I'm here representing all our sisters and the extended family and others who work with the sisters who have a passion for justice and peace. And in fact, that includes everybody because we've had a commitment to justice since 1975. Integrity of creation has been a bit later, but I think everybody is involved in this. So I feel I'm here to represent everybody, but also I have a duty to come back and to be able to talk about it and to give the material that comes up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just going back on the collaboration and networking side, I think it's given us an opportunity too to meet many people. And today there were some wonderful opportunities for that. We had a chance to meet some of the people who actually walked in the climate pilgrimage from Rome to Paris.
Oh, wow.
And it was linked to a walk that I was involved in across Brooklyn Bridge into Manhattan at the end of October. And we met them in person, and they were thrilled to meet people who had been involved in a pilgrimage in New York. And we met the global Catholic climate movement representatives and had a chance to sit down with a couple of the other NGOs and talk with them about their strategies. And our sisters have just signed, and many of them have signed on. There was information in the last NGO bulletin. So that's the sort of collaboration that our participation here, you know, makes possible and strengthens and builds up networks that will help us in advocacy in the future, I hope.
And I think we feel here that the people here who are talking and giving their experiences, they need us, especially those who are from the countries that are most in danger. It's very difficult for them, and they're counting on us. They want us to be on their side, and they want us to represent them to here, to other people who are making decisions.
Okay, so it kind of sounds like a family get-together almost.
A global family get-together.
Yeah, exactly.
We were in a session yesterday with women in rural agriculture and mining extractive industries from, I think, at least, 15 countries, at least 10 or
Mainly
12 in
countries.
Southern Africa. And many of them were rural women who are small-scale farmers. And so it was a very interesting opportunity to hear their testimony. And that will therefore become part of what we carry forward and take back into our ministry, whether it's at the UN or working with the province animators.
It's a great privilege to be here, to hear people's experience, because it's just so moving. And when you heard those women so full of passion yesterday, you really wanted to be able to do something to help. And another thing that moved me a lot was when there were a group of men from Bangladesh who came along, and there were just about 12 of them, and they came in so simply, and they sang a hymn, and they had little posters up. They all held just very small posters, and it was, for me, it was one of the most moving points, that they would just do that in all their simplicity, coming here to ask for help from other people.
Wow. Yeah, that is very, very powerful. Subtle but powerful, right?
Right.
So, my next question would be, what is the atmosphere like around the conference?
Well, there's a tremendous amount of energy. I don't know how to describe it, because there are thousands of people, even in this outside venue. And this is only one venue, Maisha. There are 3 different venues at the moment, and they're in different parts of Paris, but we were at the main venue today and in the civil society part. So there's energy. There are opportunities for people to sit on bicycles and generate electricity so that musicians can play. And the musicians are playing and singing songs to do with climate change and the seriousness of it, the impact of it, and the need to be active in addressing it. And people are generating the electricity by being there. So you've got that sort of atmosphere. You've got
when you say about creativity too, today there were some wonderful photographs. There are a lot of exhibitions around the place, but we saw some very powerful photographs that were taken by children related to climate change. And they had been asked to enter a competition, but they were just so beautiful. And I think that sometimes can touch you more than just hearing words.
Yeah.
So vibrant.
Yes, vibrant.
Vibrant, yeah.
Yes.
I would think so. Something so profound, and it just seems like people are walking their talk, like you said, with the electricity generating by your bicycle. We're keeping to our words, so that's very, very optimistic to hear.
It makes you a bit more committed, I think. You know, it has to move you and almost convert you a little bit more in one sense, because you feel that you want to do something, that you have to act.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we did have a demonstration today.
Yes.
It was after the sisters that Veronica works with,
Mm-hmm.
they had given a, well, they had sponsored a presentation, and it was all about the extractive industries, and Veronica can explain that better. Yeah.
Keeping fossil in the ground, and really trying to make a strong statement that they hope will be heard inside the formal meetings and negotiations to ban fracking. And this, so we went outside into this area where there were, all the countries are represented by flags around pillars. And there was a very powerful opportunity for people on the ground who've been affected by the extractive industries and fracking to give their testimony. And it was, well, there were not only statements and papers, but there was very powerful testimony from Native American people, from indigenous people around the world. You may want to say a bit more.
The Native American woman was, again, she was very moving because she talked about looking forward to the 7th generation, which I think is something that we neglect badly. But she's saying we have to look to the 7th generation, to the future, and that is our aim. What kind of earth are we leaving for them? And she prayed, and she just spoke again very powerfully, that moved everybody there. But also all the witnesses there were very moving, because some of them had had direct experience with fracking, and they had lost out a lot from their homes and other experiences.
Could you give an example of what happened to a person, a story that they shared? Sorry,
There
one
was
second. Sorry.
one man who spoke about how they had been deceived at the beginning. I think there's a film out at the moment that's very like his experience, but they had come in with great offers. They had given them some money and promised them a lot more
jobs,
and they were using their land. So it was as if they had to give up their land. And so they came in and they sunk the wells, and after that there was nothing left for them. They had to move, or they were just left with land that was worth nothing.
And the quality of the water, for example, was brackish. It was no longer pure, and the health effects of that were spoken about by a number of people in the witnesses outside, not from the same geographical area. But one woman spoke of having had cancer at 20.
Wow.
And I think, you know, the indication being that it was very much linked to the effects of fracking in her area.
Wow. That is really scary.
Who said they'd had cancer early.
And one woman was speaking and had almost lost her voice, and that again was being identified, because we heard testimony from a microbiologist, wasn't she, in the panel, who was actually a university professor and has written a book, has got into and has been extremely active in New York State, back in getting the ban on fracking in New York State. So she was one of the main speakers on the panel.
Wow. Are you seeing your hopes coming to fruition in this conference?
Well, it depends on what level we're talking about hopes. I mean, certainly the main hope for the conference as a whole, although we're on the fringe of it in terms of the civil society activities, the hopes of the conference as a whole would be that there is a legally binding outcome document by Friday that is strong and that holds a commitment to all the members, to the parties to the convention to cut carbon emissions to the degree that it really does keep global warming to under 2 degrees centigrade. That would be one hope. And, you know, it's very unsure what's going to be legally binding. It's not going to be everything, but that's one part of the hope. Do you want to talk about another hope?
Well, I was just going to say that for some people who've been in observing what's going on and who have some contact with the small groups, they feel that the document is not going to be as strong as we hope for. And I feel that they are more depressed than we are, because we have all the advantage of seeing people, but they are afraid that the document won't be strong enough and that it won't be legally binding, or at least people won't take it as being legally binding.
Apparently there are some parts that are much more vulnerable than others. And, you know, the concern, I think, that certain topics and words will not appear, like biodiversity was one, the actual references to human rights was another. And then another aspect, the hope would be that there needs to be clear commitments from all the countries in terms of their carbon emissions. And we're still missing a lot of countries who have not kept to the deadline by which they would give their indication of their commitment to how they will cut carbon emissions. And they haven't made their commitments on finance. And unless there is adequate finance for the developing countries, the poorest, the least developed countries, the ones who've had often the least emissions over these last 100 years, and yet are often feeling some of the worst impacts of climate change. And they need help to adapt and to do the mitigation for climate change. And that's another area that our hopes in that area are unlikely to be met adequately.
But I think we go away with great hope. And a lot of people who were talking to us too spoke about this hope that we have to maintain. And the hope is that people will resist, that people will keep struggling, and that we'll find a bond with every person on this earth, and that bond will give us the commitment, and that those of us who are here will just go and be so committed that we'll spread the word and we'll encourage others to be as committed.
Can I just add one little thing? And the fact that there are quite a few religious congregations who are NGOs at the UN represented here at the meeting, some inside and some like ourselves on the fringe, will also give us a very good opportunity to work together when we return to New York, because it gives us a common shared experience and basis for our educational work, as well as our advocacy and action and communication to our members.
I think too, as sisters, we're very conscious of our role as women, and people who are talking to us are counting on women. And they're also saying we have to be educating the children, start with children, because it's children who are going to be so important. First of all, we owe it to the children, but also it's their world in the future. But that women are very, very important in this role of carrying on the hope and working towards the goals that we need to reach.
A good example with the children was the program that Mary Montney did on Saturday, where most of the children were middle school, and there were schools, 2 other schools participated, and the children it offered an incredible opportunity to hear some of the speakers and some of the participants who'd come from Indonesia, from Peru, from main film producers here in the United States who've done films on climate change, speak to profoundly important issues in ways that those children have been given a wonderful opportunity. Yes. So that was a good example.
Wow, yeah.
And can I add one thing, Maisha? And you
Please.
can cut this out. But last night I attended an event which was an interfaith event, which was really a very beautiful reflection on how, unless we start with relationship to ourselves, to one another, and to the earth, we will never have either peace, development, or be able to have the sort of lifestyle that can be in harmony with the continuation of the earth not being absolutely devastated by climate change. And we had Hindu and Buddhist, Zen, Catholic, and it was a beautiful common message of the importance of harmony and being really at core at one in terms. Someone even said, this is the most important session in the entire conference. Because, you know, climate change has to start, our addressing it has to start within ourselves and our relationships.
For me, some of the spontaneous movements and representations of need by different small groups, like I said, the men from Bangladesh and others who come in procession just with very simple posters. There's nothing elaborate. And that's a contrast with the business interests that are there. And I think we're holding that tension all the time. The business interests have been very strong and people feel that they've affected the document. And on the other hand, you have people from the small islands where the sea level is rising who are in desperate need. And they're there begging for our help. And I think that's the kind of image that I'll keep with me.
Wow.
And I suppose in a way, for me, the highlights are often in some way the stories that people share in the testimony and the link between them. The fact that no matter what country they're coming from, it's often, as Pope Francis, is saying, it's often among the poorest and the most marginalized that we're hearing the stories that really touch us. And even in talking today to the man who initiated this climate pilgrimage, started the fast for the climate 2 years ago because of his passion, and to suddenly meet him there today, and to be sort of taken into that wonderful sense of we are drawn together. He had been blessed by Pope Francis in the Vatican as he left Rome. We had seen all that on the internet, and there they were today. We just bumped into them and were able to talk and to hear their stories of a couple of them. So I think that is a very important part. A very significant thing, because it's that touches the heart and not just the head.
Yeah, I'm sure you've gotten a lot of spiritual enlightenment through this too, not just, intellectual.
And all of that is related to our mission, that all may have life. And I think we keep hearing it, talking about the cry of the earth, the cry of the people, and the planet and all of creation.
And they are both so linked, and it's like what comes through in Laudato Si. And the Pope's encyclical has been quoted in lots of different sections.
And by many different people who are from very different backgrounds, not all faith-based at all. So I think it has had and continues to have a profound influence.
Wow. Well, that was a really great conversation with you two. I hope that you guys can have a good rest after a long day.
Aisha, thank you.
Sure, thank you both too.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all the work you do.